Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Fuel community. My name is Wack, today is October 29th, and today's episode is jam-packed full of really interesting things. We're going to talk about Saturn Zero, of course, and how that's going. We have the GMC election, we've got a tease announcement of an announcement coming out from Maverick, and also there's a very interesting discussion taking place in the community about Tron, and let's find out what that's all about too.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Well, the only place to start, of course, is with Saturn Zero, Rocket Pool's amazing upgrade that took place on Sunday evening. It's just over, about 40 hours ago from when I'm recording it. And just after 24 hours after the event happened, here Ken took a screenshot of the deposit pool and the balance of it over the last 3 months. So that whole time, of course, it was over 18,000. It peaked just above 40,000 about a month ago. And basically from the launch of Constellation, you can see it kind of trend downwards. And then it took a huge leap downwards after a Saturn going live. And you can see this blip over here just on the right side where it shot up, and that was a node operator who was leaving to pay back their RPL to Aave. It was 155,000 RPL that they were repaying their loan on. It's going to be really interesting to see if they actually come back into Rocket Pool or not. I don't think they have at the moment, but yeah, hopefully they will come back soon. But that is looking really good, and we're going to actually dig into that. So this is the numbers from last night, which was at 10 p.m. And overnight, what we had was the deposit pool hit less than 10,000. So that was also a nice milestone to see that, the numbers are going down really nicely. Jasper wrote this tweet about it saying that down under 10,000 in the deposit pool, 17,000 ETH processed in 29 hours since we upgraded from a high of 41,000 2 weeks ago. So just showing just how incredible, Constellation and Saturn Zero together have been in terms of kind of turning around this ship, basically, this huge ship. And it's just been really cool that, it's happened this way. Now, if we have a look at this post from Hululo, Hululo, of course, was one of the chief researchers behind Saturn Zero and kind of coming up with the idea for it. And Hululo and his fellow researchers got a grant for this for $15,000 for saying thank you for the research. And the second part of the application was, hey, if this is really good, please give us more money. Now, the really good part was that they would get $60,000 if Rocket Pool got 10,000 new validators coming online between Saturn Zero and Saturn 1. That's when this period ends. So Hululo made the script kind of tracking things, and this is from this morning. So he says that a block 21,600,000. No, wait, that's 21,060,412. That's with the block number, I think, where Saturn went live. It says the total node operator ETH at that time, excluding Constellation, was 216,920, and the total protocol ETH at that time, excluding Constellation, was 488,680. It says current stats. This is from the latest block. The total node operator ETH is 224,752. So that has gone up almost 9,000 ETH, and then the total protocol ETH is 522,922, which has gone up over 34,000. Over 34,000. So that's just, I think that's right. Yeah. So he says the Constellation NETH is 4,500, and of that, collateralized 45 is 3,864, and Constellation protocol ETH is 13,512, and of that, collateralized 15% is 11,592. So the changes, these are the net changes that have come through. So since Saturn Zero went live, the net change in node operator ETH is 4,000 new node operator ETH has come online, and the net change in protocol ETH is 22,720. So total pay that the GMC currently owes, the Saturn Zero team is $3,744. out of a max of 60,000. So that just shows you just the sheer amounts of ETH that's actually come into the protocol. So it's like the total amount is close to 27,000 there, which is absolutely phenomenal. And that's as of this morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Now, Nashua here did some comparisons for me as well. I've been asking Nashua twice a day to kind of run these numbers for me and see what's going on. So this was from last night, around just under 24 hours after Saturn Zero went live. So he said by that point there had been 319 bond reductions, and there had been 582 mini pools that were created. That's new validators coming online, and of the bond reductions, they're created using credit was 160 of them. So 160 of them were created using credit. And then this morning, Nashua then ran the numbers for me again, and he says the total number of bond reductions was 386. Total mini pools created was 835, and mini pools created using credit are 327. So that meant that at this point there were 60 people who had bond reduced but hadn't actually activated their new validator using the reduced bond. However, just a quick look at the events channel that shows you that there's a whole lot more bond reductions coming in, and people are starting to turn on those validators with the credit as well. So this is actually, I've been following these numbers. I'm going to keep following these numbers for the next few days and just see how, whether we're getting credit validators coming online, whether we're getting new ETH, whether we're getting new node operators. So these are kind of things that I want to keep a good eye on, because I think that, nearly 1,000 validators basically coming online is pretty amazing, like by any stretch of the imagination. So this has been really amazing. Okay, let's move on. And here we are going to talk about this new protocol update that came from Mav. And he says, here, everyone, and there's two parts of it, but I'm going to talk about the second part first, and then I'm going to talk about the second part second, because that is going to give us a new, the next topic to talk about. And he says, keep an eye out for a bigger announcement coming very soon. So this was obviously an announcement, which is quite famous in crypto. And the announcement is just as a way of building hype. And we kind of think we figured out what it is in the team, in the community. And we think that it's basically the team got their Twitter account back, and looking forward to some kind of posting taking place there. So that's what we think is the case. But it's gonna be interesting to see what that ends up being, because that I think was leaked by the Sad Broke director, saying that Alpha Growth helped the team get their Twitter account back. So I think Maverick's announcement was kind of front run there. So sorry for doing that again for you, Mav. But okay, let's talk about the second part now. So the second part is, it says a quick governance announcement from me. Voting for the next GMC membership is now live. It's weighted choice voting, so make sure you allocate your voting power accordingly. Now, before we go and have a look at the vote, let's have a look at this post by Shifrin. So this is the GMC membership selection of 2024 to 2025. It says we'll be selecting a new roster of 9 GMC members. Use the thread to share your feedback or ask questions for the nominees. So here are the nominees. There's Destroyer, Dondo, Dr. Doofus, Ken, Kevster, Lee, Len of Tower, Looking for Owls, Ramana, Scuzzle, Snowcones, Steely, and me. And it says in order to inform your choices, please refer to, and then there's the GMC nomination thread. And then, we already talked about this in yesterday's episode. However, what's new is Shifrin himself actually started using this. He says, as I've mentioned before, I think all GMC members in year 2 have been fantastic contributors, and the DAO would be in excellent shape if they all continued. However, with some members stepping down, there's also a value in bringing in fresh perspectives. Shifrin says, I'll keep refining my votes as we go along. My current voting priorities are as follows in order of importance. This is ensuring each subcommittee has a strong balance and representation, development, marketing, research. And he says, I believe it's essential to have at least one returning member in each subcommittee to provide continuity in past discussions, applications, decisions, and accumulated experience. Then he says, member availability. Shifrin puts a lot of importance on this. And then he says, enthusiasm from members who genuinely want to serve. So this, of course, is really important, because the more enthusiasm that someone goes into the project with, the more likely they are to work hard on that. However, that's not always the case. Like last year, Epinef and Dr. Doofus were two people who were kind of on the fence with, being elected, saying maybe elect someone else. They were elected, and Epinef, I think, has been one of the best people that I've worked with on the GMC in my whole time. And that is not to say that others were not good. There were some amazing people, but I really extremely value the contributions that Epinef made over this last year. Epinef's a huge loss to not being on the GMC next year, and I begged him so many times to come back, but he thought it was time for someone else to have it go, and that's fine. Like, he did his duty extremely well, but yeah, the enthusiasm, like you never kind of know how things are going to end up being, like, who steps up and who doesn't, but enthusiasm definitely is a really good thing. So if you want to give your feedback, if you want to like share your ideas on how you're voting, who you're voting for, what your process is into it, you can put it in this thread where people can kind of talk about it. Let's actually have a look at the votes where they stand right now. So we have reached 66% of quorum. Let me change the view so you guys can see it a little bit more clearly. 66% of quorum has been reached. We already talked about the description, so we won't go through that again, but the votes as they stand: so Scuzzle 940, Snowcones 902, Lee 889, Steely 817, Dr. Doofus 813, Ken 793, Whack 791, Destroyer 701, Looking for Owl 750, Ramana 596, Kevster 595, Len of Tower 410, and Dondo 330. So these are the votes as they currently stand. A couple of other big votes have come in. It might be better for me to change the view so my face is not covering it. So here we have Hululu voted, and Hululu has voted, for certain. He said that everyone on this list is qualified to be on the GMC. Higher weight to those whose perspective that I see as uniquely valuable for the protocol. Schifrin, he gave his reasoning, and Scuzzle said, I would likely to adjust. A bunch of other people said that they're likely to adjust as well. Like Patches says, subject to change as I mull it over. So, these numbers are not final, but it looks like at least the front pack is kind of getting ahead, and then there's a middle pack and then a back pack, and I think that maybe position 8 and 9 might be subject to change, but it looks like the top 6 or 7 are pretty much like going to get elected at this stage. There's still a lot of votes to come in, like we haven't even reached quorum yet, so things can change, but that's just the way things are looking right now. Okay, let's go back to the Rocket Pool Discord, and here we have a very, very interesting thread that came out from Alpha Growth, and this was by the Sad Broke director. You all know that the GMC hired Alpha Growth for business development, and well, with the explicit mandate of driving more rETH minting to happen. I think a bunch of us in the GMC kind of, Alpha Growth actually came to us in the beginning saying, hey, we can bring node operators online. Do you want that? And we were like, yeah, we kind of want node operators. This was like, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, saying, yeah, we kind of want node operators right now, but very, very soon, we're going to need a whole lot of rETH to come online to kind of help those node operators that we already have, like bond reduce and bring the old validators back online. So we kind of told them, look, what we want you guys to do is bring rETH online instead of bringing node operators online, at least for the next few months. We're working with them for 4 months at the moment, so they are off doing that. They're trying to get more rETH minted. And what's really interesting is they came to the community today to kind of talk about this one deal that they're working on. So Sad Broke Director says, good GX Rocket Pool community, as recipients of the GMC grant, we've been tasked to explore strategic deals and believe this one warrants community discussion. Since Alpha Growth would like to present a significant deal opportunity for the DAO's consideration, we've been in talks with the Tron DAO to mint rETH and bridge it to their ecosystem, supporting their DeFi growth while aligning with Rocket Pool's decentralized values. We'd appreciate your thoughts and feedback on this potential collaboration. And right away, we got a message from Hululo. Now, the reason why there's a message here is because Tron is owned and run by Justin Sun. There are a few things on Tron that people find kind of dubious, such as the USDD stablecoin that I think is based on the Terra Luna model. And, it's kind of on shaky ground just for that reason. However, over the last 2 years, Tron has built a tremendously huge audience and mainly using it for stablecoin payments. there's $59 billion of USDT on Tron, while there's only like, $750 million of USDD, which is the risky one. But the idea is that, it's kind of shady. Justin Sun has done a lot of shady things in the past. And, do we as a community kind of want to associate with Tron? Like, Vitalik in a previous post has said the main thing that protocols in crypto have is legitimacy. And if you sacrifice your legitimacy for gains, then you kind of get left with nothing. And that, of course, I think is one of the guiding foundational ideas from the Rocket Pool community, is that we are extremely Ethereum aligned, and we are happy to do things that are Ethereum aligned. However, if there are things that we feel kind of betrayed those ethos and those values, maybe it's something to be more hesitant about. Well, what ended up happening was a really, really great discussion kind of emerged out of this about what the lines of the community are, right? Like, what are we willing to do or not do? Waldorf here had a message saying all non-mainnet stuff involves a bridge, and rETH permissionally available, so that happens regularly anyhow. So for example, Axelar, which is on Cosmos, has bridged rETH over there using Axelar rETH. He says, I start getting opinionated if they start branding it as rETH without any affix. And he says that that can cause confusion, but that should be blessed if it happens at all. And then there were a whole bunch of other things as well. People like this is what I said I would really love to hear the opinions of a lot of people in the community on this, because it's the kind of thing that might come up a lot in the coming year, and how we approach it now might set the path for future relationships. And I said, for what it's worth, I'm not against rETH going anywhere. It's permissionless after all. I can't stop it from going anywhere, right? I said, however, I'm still not sure of where I stand on co-incentivizing or co-marketing this move, because that then kind of creates a relationship, and that is where the issues could lie. Lulu here said, just for a different perspective, as long as the chain itself is safe and it's for culture, just culture and existing ecosystem that hold it back, that's potentially more of a reason to have rETH on there, more potential to improve the existing offering and give people better choices. But there were there's a lot of really good comments here. XIR YNX, I'm sorry, I have no idea how to pronounce that. Xirinx, I think, a team said like that they don't like Tron because of the USDD on there, and basically there's general negative sentiment around Tron. And here there's a CoffeeZilla episode as well about USDD being on Tron and how it's so closely related to Justin Sun. What's really funny is mentioning that episode from CoffeeZilla actually brought up the spam warning detected bot. So that was really funny to see that. But there were voices like from Noshua here says, we currently aren't doing anything but liquidity anywhere as far as I know. He says, I'd say non-liquidity incentives on Tron are lower priority than non-liquidity incentives on Ethereum, for example. He says, as long as liquidity incentives on Tron, what makes incentives spent on Tron better than elsewhere? How big an advantage is this? And Jasper says, I'm against any official partnership for the damage it would cause to our reputation. He says, I'm fine with rETH being bridged there, but against spending RPL on liquidity for it. And then he says, Tron is the home of the second most stablecoin swap volumes, but it's also the home of crypto money laundering. So yeah, and then so this was actually a really, really fascinating discussion. I really think that you should go and read all of it, just to kind of get the idea of where the contours of what the community thinks is good and what is not good, and where those contours lie. And then Sadbrook Director was just kind of like poking at these kind of like contours, trying to find out how the shape kind of comes together, right? And he says, how much rETH would the Tron DAO need to mint for the Rocket Pool DAO to be open to a conversation on co-marketing incentives, and what kind of marketing? And Jasper then kind of said $200 million for co-marketing. I don't really see much of a difference between marketing and incentives, since both are equally impactful on our reputation. And then he says 40 billion would be an auto yes, but kind of joking about that. And then here Sadbrook Director said, so if Tron DAO came to Rocket Pool DAO and said, I want to mint 20 million rETH with the possibility to mint more if a successful campaign launch on Tron, the DAO would be happy to take their money quietly. I'm not advocating for Tron, but these conversations help us as we continue to source out deals on behalf of the DAO. So look, if it's quietly, right, like they can do whatever they want because it's all open, like it's all open to the public, it's permissionless. There's nothing that we can do to stop Tron from coming and minting every last rETH they possibly can and keeping the deposit pool full, as long as they keep minting it. Like, there's nothing we can do to stop them. So that's the quietly part, right? Like, there's nothing we can do to stop them. However, if once you start putting the co-incentives and marketing in there, that's where things get a little bit different. Okay, so then here, Sadbro Writer said, one question I also have, I'm playing devil's advocate here, is Rocket Pool trying to compete with other LSTs like Lido? What kind of deals do you think will help Rocket Pool surpass Lido as a top Ethereum LST? And Jasper replied by saying, I think we're absolutely trying to battle for the best LST spot, so we need to greatly expand how many holders we have globally. And that, of course, makes sense. Like, we want, our ETH to be in millions of wallets and to be available to as many people as possible, right? And that was really important. And what we were talking about here is that there's a lot of scope for our ETH minting in the coming days and weeks. Just from bond reductions, we'll have about 150,000 ETH worth of our ETH available, which is a lot of ETH. This is where Jasper was kind of like drawing his lines. He says, I don't want posts publicizing our ETH on Tron. Would look great on us, but if they just mint it and there is no Twitter post or anything, then I don't think we've got any like scrutiny basically coming onto the protocol, whether that's from governmental agencies or from the wider community. However, one thing that people were saying was like what we could do is kind of tap into bull post like permissionless and decentralization. He says if Tron does the marketing, we just bull post permissionless and decentralization and not make explicit normative statements. So this discussion is still ongoing. Like, there's going to be, I think, a lot of opinions shared in this. I really hope that people who are stalwarts of the community, who've been around for a while, who kind of have ideas about this topic, come and share their views. Because like I said, I think this is really important that the community as a whole kind of figures out what we want and how we want to draw these lines. Like, are we willing to pay people to mint our ETH? Are we willing to pay people to promote Rocket Pool and get our ETH into more hands? Like, will we have to do that? Like, Lido used to spend millions of dollars, in the early days of STETH, paying for integrations, paying for liquidity, paying for basically direct minting incentives through things like Ledger, through the Ledger Live app and stuff. So we want Rocket Pool, to grow exponentially. We have given Rocket Pool the capacity to do that, first with Saturn 0, where we can potentially bring hundreds of thousands of our ETH online, just from the people who are already in our community, let alone anyone outside. After that, with Saturn 1, we will be bond reducing down to 4 ETH validators. That will basically let us, massively increase our ETH supply by orders of like basically doubling it overnight. When that happens in July next year, so there's potentially next year there's hundreds of thousands of ETH that we would need to have minted. Now, what are we willing to do to make that happen, right? And I think that is something that we should be thinking about now, and the community should kind of come together and formulate what their ideas are about this topic, just so when the opportunities come ahead, then what are we willing to do? And here Sadbrook Director kind of summed it up. He says the DAO is discovering its left and right lateral limits on who it is willing to work with and help decentralize the LST market and Ethereum. So I think that's what's really important here, is that this is the thing that the community needs to do, is we kind of need to talk to each other and try to figure out what we think those limits are and where we think they stand. So when we go forwards this year, we can work with those limits in mind and understand what the community will work with, what we will co-incentivize, what we will co-market, and what we potentially wouldn't do that with. Noshua here says, do you think we can afford to incentivize liquidity on every chain and L2 in a meaningful way, meaning at some point we're better off focusing on critical liquidity on a few over low liquidity that supports zero integrations on all? If not, based on what criteria are we picking chains L2s? I think it's reasonable to prefer options that are more ethos aligned. I don't think Tron stands out there. I think it would also be reasonable to prefer options that provide the best return on investment. I'm asking if Tron does stand out there. And then Ishka said, my position is that rETH bridging to and existing on Tron is fine. Us endorsing or co-marketing for the chain is not. And then arbitrary minting of rETH on Tron is not. So there's some bridges that do mint and burn features. And I think what Ishka is saying that he doesn't want there to be like arbitrary minting of rETH happening on the Tron network. Of course, that would not be backed by anything. So, rETH is well insured, basically collateralized liquid stable token that has like slashing protections built into it. Of course, if the rETH supply doubled overnight, for example, arbitrarily, then those protections would be gone basically, and the rewards obviously wouldn't accrue in the right same way as well. But here there was a comment that Sad Broke Director said, this is the question I'm presenting to the community. Community can discuss and have consensus on whether they think this is an opportunity they would like to take advantage of. LSTs will eventually get under Tron. So the question is which one do we want that to happen with? Second question I would have is this more of technical question is, can Rocket Pool, the infrastructure layer for chains, can be the infrastructure layer for chains to create their own LSTs for their own chain, similar to size sETH? Dinero is running the validator service for this. And Jasper says it doesn't really work for us to work on multiple chains. And Noshua says Rocket Pool is built for and solving a particular challenge of proof of stake on Ethereum. If something is essentially an Ethereum clone, you can use a Rocket Pool clone. If it's something different, Rocket Pool becomes not useful pretty quickly. And then I want to get to this comment from Valdorf here. He says, one of the main things that we have as a real advantage is our brand and ethos. So in the general case, competing by watering down, that strikes me as short-sighted. He says, I'm very happy for rETH to get used there or anywhere since it's permissionless to mint and use. He says supporting it via brand association or incentives needs to be a clear win to me. That can trade off return of interest beyond what the IMC usually gets with how the association reflects on us. Strength of association is also a thing, e.g. Tron rETH would have a lower bar for me than rETH, like Rocket Pool rETH on Tron. So yeah, so there's some interesting comments, like I said, come here. So Sad Broke Direct, this is where the conversation stands right now. He says, I want to debrief the conversation of the channel today and clarify opportunities and boundaries for the Rocket Pool DAO collaborations. He says, the recap, Tron minting rETH is a positive development, but the Rocket Pool DAO support may be contingent on significant mint, such as $100 million plus in rETH. To move forward, I'd like to ask the community, what guidelines would you recommend for the Rocket Pool DAO engagement? Which non-L2 chains is the community open to supporting for rETH integration? This is like all layer ones, basically. What are the return on investment expectations for these collaborations? What incentives is the community willing to offer to encourage DAOs or chains to mint $5 to $20 million worth of rETH? So this, I think this whole conversation is absolutely fascinating. I think it's a very, very important conversation that we should be having. So if you do have opinions on this, please get involved in the discussion, because only of all of us working together can we actually come up with ideas that will suit us very well going forwards. Okay, so moving on to some other things. I know that was quite a big topic there. Is here we have the team got paid. So recently there was a vote that went through. The community was in favor of it. There were a few questions about how it was all set up and how it all looked, but overall, the vote went through, and people were quite happy with it overall. And then we see this bootstrap mode treasury spend. So out of the PDAO treasury, there was 52,000 and 79.2 RPL tokens removed from there. I think the previous treasury amount was PDAO treasury amount was somewhere like 89,000. Once Vaka gets his next treasury report in, we'll see those numbers. But yeah, this number is really great that the team got paid, and that's actually really cheap. Like I think that's just over $500,000. Of course, if RPL goes to $100 or more, that we hope that it might. Well, we're going to talk about that later. But if RPL increases in price, then we might be like, whoa, we're paying them too much. But I think we're getting a pretty good deal for this coming year. Okay, and then Langers replied by saying, following the successful vote of the protocol development funding renewal, the team will execute the PDAO budget expense to cover potential protocol development from 25th of October 2024 to the 4th of October 2025. So that's 1 whole year starting last week. And it says, we are acutely aware that the PDAO have put their faith in us to help drive the protocol forward. We're deeply thankful and committed to delivering. So that was a really nice statement from Langers for that as well. But yeah, this is money that the Rocket Pool DAO has spent this money to pay for the team. And I think that this is the best money that we spend in terms of rate of return, because we have one of the best teams that you could have in terms of alignment with the protocol, because they kind of made the protocol, and in terms of the ethos of the protocol, because they kind of set like they were part of setting the early ethos of the protocol, and they've got experience working on Rocket Pool for many years. So as terms of return per dollar investment, with RPL price being low, we're getting an absolutely incredible deal for this year coming. Yeah, the team, there's been people in the community who have said that, we should be paying them in US dollars, and, the community should kind of try to figure out ways of doing that. And the team's like, no, we just want like the part of the inflation. And that's going to be interesting to see how that keeps going forward. But for right now, this is amazing. Okay, next we have news of a client release, and my browser, yeah, there it goes. And this one is from Nimbus, and Nimbus here is saying that this is release 24.10.0, and there's this actually a low urgency, high urgency upgrade. So it says Nimbus 24.10.0 is a low urgency release with performance improvements and stability fixes. However, this is a high urgency in specific cases where the beacon REST API might be externally exposed, which is not the default configuration. So if you are one of those people where your beacon REST API might be exposed, then this is a high urgency update for you. If not, then just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, a really interesting discussion came up in Reddit's rETHstaker page yesterday, and here these are people who just want to stake, talk about staking, and there was a thread comparing Lido CSM versus Rocket Pool 8 ETH no RPL validators. So the person said, now that both options are live, I'd like to hear the community's thoughts on Lido versus Rocket Pool to use rewards to spin up additional validators. He says it looks like mathematically Lido gives more rewards, at 2.37 times staking rewards versus Rocket Pool's 1.3 times. And he says, anyone consider bandwidth? Does it matter? And the answer was like, no, having validators, 6 validators, one really doesn't make a difference on your bandwidth. He says, I'm seeing a lot of shade being thrown at Lido because they are so dominant and not helping with decentralizing Ethereum staking. Please share your views on that too. Also, has anyone actually used these? Please share your feedback. So Ephemery here, who I was praising earlier, now I'm going to say horrible Ephemery. No, I'm just kidding. Ephemery says, need to comment when I saw the user stating Rocket Pool has centralization risk, go to Lido. That's really some twisted logic. So one of the people that we're going to come to later was making this point that Rocket Pool is centralized, so it's better to go to Lido. He says, I'm an active contributor to Rocket Pool and run both CSM and the Rocket Pool smart node, and an OBOL DVT cluster and a node set hyperdrive. So he says, so from pure APR, CSM is significantly higher than no RPL LEB8s and will be for at least a year until Saturn 2 comes around. He says setup for CSM was super simple, and one of the plugins I used ETH Pillar. Rocket Pool Smart Node is also very easy compared to figuring out solo staking by using a guide like Summer ESAT, and there's tons of really great support. He says bandwidth is pretty much the same. He says some points in favor of Rocket Pool. So Lido's already 30% of stake. They don't need more. Rocket Pool has historically been more aligned with home stakers, and then there's a whole bunch of different things, that Ephemery lists ways in which they are aligned with home stakers. He says Rocket Pool has much better support in the community. Running mini pools now gives priority access to eventual further bond reductions that are tentatively set to occur in Q3 of 2025. And he says CSM requires conversion to STETH, and this might be a taxable event. And what happens is you can deposit your ETH, and that ETH on the back end is swapped to STETH to be used as your collateral, and then it's swapped back to ETH when you receive it. So there's quite it seems kind of, well, I don't want to say you check it with your tax advisor to see how that goes, but the fact that you get rewards in STETH means that there might be something going on there. Anyway, there was a bit of discussion there, and Ephemery being like the usual amazing self that he is, there were some comments I just didn't understand. I don't want to get into them too much, but one of them here was particularly interesting because this person, wait, was this the right one? Let me see. Was it this one? no, this one. Okay, so it says Lido CSM is better at the moment. Maybe that will change when Saturn 2 goes live for Rocket Pool. I will add that even with all the hate on Lido, this is a step in the good direction. It says also Lido staking is easier to run with a custom setup like vanilla staking. No need to run the Rocket Pool stack. The Rocket Pool stack is good for newbies though. It says Rocket Pool has no incentives to support solo stakers. They do not use the Genesis staker list at any moment, unlike Lido for early access. It says you can see that they have a lot of whales that are institutions, so maybe they should rework their image before bashing Lido, since they also have centralization risks favoring RPL holders instead of solo stakers. So that was the comment that Epinef was kind of responding to as a high level comment. But here people were like, what are you talking about with their institutions, right? And it turns out basically that this person was insinuating that Thomas was an institution instead of just like a regular person. And let me find that post from Thomas that he replies here. Sorry, this was actually a different person saying, check the top node operator. They have lots of validators. Those are not home stakers for sure. Centralization will happen in any protocol, DAO or not. And then people are just like, that's Thomas, that's what wall? Like, what are you talking about? And here there's even an interview with them, and the person links them to my Rocket Fuel episode, my Launchpad episode with Thomas. And then here Thomas says, I am absolutely a home staker and genuinely ran my node on an old gaming PC for over a year. I'm not an institution, and neither are any of the large holders within the Rocket Pool ecosystem. Well, we did have an institution, 1KX, but they're left, of course. So there we can actually say that honestly now, that none of them are institutions. And OKX was just like a baby institution. But what's really interesting is, of course, the Rocket Pool community was just like, what on earth are these guys talking about? Like, let's try to figure this out. And this is a picture of the institution that is Thomas, who ran his PC with 1,000 validators. So when you look at the picture, it's basically an open exposed fan with an open exposed computer board with wires just like sat on a shelf. And I don't know what this is, but like this was Thomas's node for I think over a year before he was just like, okay, maybe I should fix this. I think his dog even bit one of the cables at a time and chewed through it or something. So this was Thomas's network. Like for those of you listening on the podcast, like you should really click the link and see this picture if you haven't seen it before. But this is like a legendary picture in the Rocket Pool community because of just what it represented, right? Like this is the literal most bare bones basic system that you can have. And I think at one point it was supporting over 1,000 validators. So yeah, that was really funny. And then Thomas here says it was an i7 4770 and a SATA SSD. All you need to run a node, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And then Joe replied by saying cries in ARM. Now, ARM are, the people who make the Rock 5B board and like the Raspberry Pi. It's a different architecture system. And Thomas says, I need to feel the heat so I know that it's working. So yeah, this was what you could do. Like this is Rocket Pool, right? Like, this is home. These are home stakers. These are people who are managing their ETH themselves for the most part, and things are slowly starting to change now. I guess, you might be able to say NodeSet and Constellation is an institution, but it's more like an L2. But in terms of like, some company coming and running their validators on Rocket Pool, like that's not happened so far, right? Except 1KX and maybe Dokia Finance back in the day, but they weren't that big. However, going forward, there's a chance that, we will get some institutions actually coming to Rocket Pool, and that, can be a good or a bad thing. Of course, they're going to help the protocol TVL grow massively, but, there might be some centralization trade-offs that, Rocket Pool made in order to scale. And that was one of the pieces of feedback that came up from Mike and from Nick and Wanda, their feedback, a few months ago on the tokenomics stuff. That was one of the things that they highlighted as an area of concern. But, the community's kind of picked this direction. Being a node operator on Rocket Pool is permissionless. We can't stop anyone from being a node operator. There's nothing we can do. And that is just the reality of the situation. So, yeah, if you do, if any big institutions want to come stake on Rocket Pool, we can't stop them. Okay, going back to actually, like, this is a slightly different topic, even though it's on Reddit here, is that there is like a shift in sentiment that's kind of occurring about Rocket Pool right now. And I'm seeing, like, I've not been seeing this for a few weeks or a couple of months now, is like, we're starting to see the shoots kind of coming through here of sentiment shift and like, optimism and hope kind of coming back to Rocket Pool. Now, there's one thing that you have to remember, right, is like people love Rocket Pool. Like they love the Ethereum alignment, like ETH maxis are all about Rocket Pool. And the thing that they didn't like about Rocket Pool is that you had to buy RPL. And for that reason, people either stayed away or they did buy RPL and then come to Rocket Pool and then got burned with the RPL price going down. So, a lot of our old node operators sadly got burned. But for the protocol itself, I think people always like Rocket Pool and what it stands for, kind of like standing as a bastion of decentralization and those Ethereum values and ethos, whereas other staking protocols have taken shortcuts to greater extents than others, but almost all of them have. So here, Ian Zach, Zach, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm so sorry, says, wow, at this rate, Rocket Pool's deposit pool might actually be empty by tomorrow or even in a few hours. Has anyone here tried valuing RPL considering the Saturn 0+1 upgrades? And here Huarag replied by saying, I'm happy I went back in yesterday with the ETH from the mini pools I exited in the winter. I exited them to farm PT ETH on Pendle. That ETH was dormant for the last few weeks. I also bond reduced some older mini pools I still had. That was a smooth experience as well. And now I'm happily staking again with the most permissionless and decentralized liquid staking protocol. Looking forward to the next 2 Rocket Pool upgrades, which will make it even better. And here, Sicilias X said, yeah, there's some estimations for fair value for RPL ETH ratio based on the additional ETH income it unlocks after Saturn 1. It directly depends on Rocket Pool's TVL, so that is ultimately the variable you need to estimate. He says, I think, not sure. It's about fair value now if you consider no TVL growth into Saturn 1. If we expect growth, and I do, then it's objectively a good investment. And this is Hululu might be able to chime in. So Hululu said the main issue is that you have to make a lot of assumptions. In general, the way to determine fair value under new tokenomics is by looking at the protocol revenue going towards RPL and finding the required asset price to achieve ETH staking yield and some risk premium so that it's as attractive to hold as a normal LST, for example. So he says, in order to do that, you need to know what the required risk premium will be and also predict where the revenue split in Saturn 1 and 2 ends up. He says, depending on what kind of yield will be needed to attract enough node operators, we're probably somewhere around fair value, but it's hard to give exact numbers. And here Peg to Peg says, I'm sure that Rocket Pool will pump during a bull, but it's not even being needed to lock isn't great for valuation. He says, I've been out of the RPL game for a while. What Saturn upgrades give the token value? And Hulu says the trick is to make people want to hold it instead of forcing them to hold it. And he says revenue share starts with Saturn 1. And then ETH 10K is first says, removing the RPL bond requirements make it easier to accumulate TVL, which is what many tokens are valued on. RPL still has utility in the protocol, but even that may not be needed in my opinion if you look at other tokens basically purely based on protocol TVL. And that's where things like Lido's ST-ETH gets its value from, right? Like it doesn't yield anything. It has no use other than in governance. And even that is, completely taken over by a handful of small wallets that can kind of sway their vote their way if they wanted. But that has so much value. And then here, just to keep things balanced, Conscious Guy says RPL is a complete shitcoin. Been saying it since day one. Can we please stop shilling this garbage here? And then other people said that shut up basically. And then still sticking on on Reddit, and this is on the Rocket Pool Discord, saying, can Rocket Pool's RPL reach $100 this bull season? RPL price predictions. So I don't want to talk price predictions. I don't want to talk about price, but the fact that people are starting to talk about price now means that they're kind of thinking about investing in RPL here, and then wondering, what kind of returns will it have, and kind of using that against their mental model for ETH. So for example, if you think in your mind ETH goes to 10K, that's a 4x from here, right? But if you think RPL goes to 100, that's a 10x from here. So you'd be better off in that case holding RPL than holding ETH. I am not telling you to hold RPL instead of holding ETH. I'm not telling you what tokens to hold or what investments to make. All I'm trying to do is understand that psyche that kind of goes behind these decisions, and what people might be thinking about, what their returns might be from here. So for example, Solana, let's just say it's $200. Do you think Solana goes to $1,000? That'll be a 5x from here, right? That's pretty great investment and great return. However, if you think RPL is going to 100, then that's 10 times more. So then it would be more prudent to invest in RPL. Now, there's so many different factors at play, like risk and what your expectations are, and what percentage of your portfolio you're going to be allocating, and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to get into any of that. But one of the things I actually found really funny here is Ethereum says absolutely every chance it will peak around $300. And then another comment here said, absolutely no chance will peak around $30. So that just tells you the two faces of people kind of giving their price predictions. But one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this is because I think there's a shift in psychology kind of occurring where people are starting to think about these questions like, what can RPL do? And remember, this is the same community, well, not the Rocket Pool community, but ETH Finance, where people until like 2 weeks ago were saying, RPL is in a death spiral, Rocket Pool is in a death spiral, TVL is down only, RPL price is down only, it's a shit coin, it's trash, it's not worth it, we like the idea, but they've done it really badly, they're exploitative, blah, blah, blah. And now, the counter narrative is starting to kind of take hold, and it's really interesting, right? Because the TVL is kind of driving all of this. With Constellation going live, RPL's TVL started to go. The protocol's TVL started to go up. With Saturn Zero, of course, we're going to see huge jumps in TVL coming. So those kind of things together, I think, are absolutely amazing to see. Okay, next we have Langer's talking at Staking Summit. So here he says supercharging Rocket Pool. So he is actually going to be, I think, the first speaker or one of the early speakers in the morning at 10:40 a.m. And Ken says Heads Up Langers has the poll keynote at the Staking Summit. So I think they'll have the intros, and then Langers will be one of either the first speaker or one of the first speakers. And basically, I think he's going to be shilling the F out of Rocket Pool, the protocol, for 15 minutes, talking about all the amazing things that are happening, how TVL is growing, and what Saturn 1 and Saturn 2 are going to do. I think he's going to very much focus on shilling the protocol as much as he can. And then the very next talk actually is from Lido, Advancing Staking Accessibility, Lido's Path to Improving Decentralization. So it looks like that is going to be about CSM, but it's funny that, those two talks are back to back. But that if you're going to Staking Summit, definitely you're going to have to wake up early, so don't stay out partying too late the night before. Okay, to finish up the Rocket Pool section, on this community part of it here, there's a thread that Dr. Doofus made yesterday for promises. So people will make statements in the Rocket Pool Discord that get lost in trading because there's literally thousands of messages a day and no one can ever find previous declarations made by community members. So the purpose of this thread is that people put your promise in here. For example, if RPL goes to $100, I will eat 40 tacos and film it. That is a comment made by Meek. It says, add it here to be determined if we can have it enforced consequences. And Genum says, let's mint a proof of promise enforcement. So I came in and I've said this in trading before. I said, I promise to send $100,000 to the RPL benefactor to distribute if I sell my Diva tokens for $1 million. And Ramana says, I made my promise here. And Ramana's promise in trading is that if he gets 600 ETH block on his solo validator, he will send 69 ETH of that to the Rocket Pool smoothing pool. So if you want to make a promise, get it out there, and we'll hold you to it when the time comes. Okay, moving on to some staking news now. We've got an update of Lido CSM and Lido as well in general, but we're going to start with the CSM here. So Hululo pulled out this like a little infographic or table, I guess, that has some really good information. So it looks like they have 120 node operators right now, and they are running 751 validators. And it says the available capacity is 35 validators. Yes, that's right. And the share limit, of course, of CSM is 1% of the whole protocol. And what's actually really interesting is that their current share, it says here, is 25%. So it looks like about a quarter of the validators that they can have online are online. And they've got a whole lot more they can actually bring online still. So this was actually shared from, let me see right here. So this is getting information from Rated, I think. So if you want to check that out, you can check it out there. And we got some more information about Lido here as well. This was from Chainlink, a partnership that they set up with them, saying that Lido Finance, the largest liquid staking protocol by TVL, has integrated Chainlink CCIP to enable users to stake ETH directly from L2 networks, including Arbitrum, Base, and Optimism. And then they say, let's see how the CCIP accelerates this. So this is actually really fascinating because this is something that people in the Rocket Pool community have been asking for a while, is instead of doing things on mainnet, especially, if there's a future bull market and gas gets really, really expensive again, people would want to mint their rETH on a layer 2, where it's much cheaper to do that instead of minting it on L1, where it looks like Lido now working with CCIP are kind of working on this. And it isn't only Lido who are working with CCIP on this. There's a whole bunch of other services as well. So Chainlink says, in addition to Lido, several other leading liquid staking and liquid restaking protocols are integrating CCIP to enable staking from layer 2 networks. This includes Diva staking, EigenPi, Frax, Gravita protocol, Origin protocol, and Stakestone. And what's really curious here is the Gravita. Of course, you all know that Constellation, that is a layer 2 on Rocket Pool, is run by Gravita. Now, I don't know if this does or does not include XRETH. If it does, that would actually be a really, really cool development for for Constellation. It would make it easier for them to get node operator ETH for Rocket Pool online. But that's something I'll be looking for more information about that and seeing how all that goes. And finally, we're going to end today's episode with a shout out from Superfizz, and this is mostly pointed towards the Rocket Pool community, and this is about the Ephemery testnet that is launching on Ethereum. And this is going to be a short lasting testnet that resets every 28 days. But he says, I'm kind of looking for a Rocket Pool OG who can operate testnet validators on the Ephemery testnet on behalf of Rocket Pool. He says the testnet is new and emerging. They're accepting Genesis validator operators for every client pair. Once these spots are filled, it'll be harder to get a voice foot in the door with Ephemery. This is because it resets every 28 days and has free flowing ether. I believe Ephemery is the perfect testnet for Rocket Pool. So if you are an OG Rocket Pool community member, someone Fizz knows and you've talked to before, and you are interested in setting up an Ephemery node, then reach out to Fizz and he will be happy to talk to you about that. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to end today's episode. It ended up being quite a long one there with the alpha growth story with the Tron. But yeah, I think this is a really exciting time for Rocket Pool. I am incredibly excited, and I'm looking forward to that deposit pool being empty very soon. I know I said that it'd be empty on Tuesday. We've still got 9 hours from the time that I'm recording for it to get empty. Right now, there's 6,131 ETH in there, so it's going to be cutting it tight, but let's see what happens. Anyway, thanks all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.